Today's episode, it's really not so much about the fruits and vegetables as it is just looking at your life. Welcome to the Produce Moms. This is the podcast where I talk to various people who've made an impact on the fruit and vegetable community. There are so many stories to share that will change the way you look at fresh produce. Our guest is Crissie Zavicar. Crissie is, when you think about how a work relationship turns into a friendship, turns into a mentorship, turns into I can't do this job without her. That is how I would describe Crissie Zavicar. She and I started working together, I don't know how many years ago, but long enough where the anniversaries, I'm no longer counting them. All right. And Crissie's job has really morphed into she started helping me with LinkedIn strategy, and now she's really helping me with just overall brand strategy. She's the woman on the team who is the catalyst for us spending some more time on our YouTube channel and kind of getting our act together there. And she's just constantly pushing on me and everyone here at TPM to do better, strive for higher, goals. And we are so blessed to have her on this team. And probably one of the most profound things that she helped us all with was when she shared her addiction and sobriety journey with us, and how she challenged us to open up our mind and change the way that we as food and beverage marketers at the Produce Moms change the way that we think about alcohol. So with that, welcome to the show, Crissie Zavicar.
Thank you so much. That is an incredibly humbling introduction, and I appreciate you so much. And I'm so thankful to have worked with you for this long. I love that with my business now, I've been working for myself, I think, since 2016. And it's to the point now where the people I work with have been with me for so long. And it's so gratifying just to have these quality in-depth relationships with people. And you're one of those. And I was so excited to actually get to go down and meet you.
Yeah, she came to the annual strategy event, and it was so weird that her and I have never actually met in person until just a few months ago in 2022.
Yeah.
Was when Crissie and I first met after working together for literally probably 4 or 5 years. This is a time of year where January, the new year, people are evaluating their lifestyle. They're thinking about, how can I live a better, healthier, more productive life? How can I feel better, look better, et cetera? All of those are things that are top of mind. And I also think that as we dive into our conversation today, anyone who is in a position where you are marketing food and beverage, where you yourself are a mom, you're going to be blown away at the perspective that Crissie has when it comes to the way that alcohol culture is everywhere, and what that means if you are someone who is, a recovering alcoholic, or someone who has chosen sobriety for, there's many reasons to choose it. But with that, Crissie, we're going to get things kicked off. Just say hello. I'm guessing most of the people here at the Produce Moms, unlike a lot of our guests here on this show, the people who tune into this show, they're really familiar with them in one way, shape, or form, because we spotlight a lot of food and beverage industry leaders and heroes here on this show. So this is kind of the first time where we've had a really a heartwarming dive with a member of our team, and someone who's been a great leader for so many other entrepreneurs. And I think our audience would love to know about your history with the NFL as well. So please introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your line of work, and then we'll dive into the first and sober journey.
So I grew up in Michigan, in Allen Park, Michigan, and was an athlete. I ran track. I played volleyball, basketball, tennis. Always wanted to work in sports. I was actually an avid baseball fan. My dad's really close friend growing up is the uncle of Jim Smoltz, or John Smoltz. His name is Jim. And so I ended up watching the Braves on TBS and was just known as like the Braves girl. And so I was huge in baseball. I wanted to work in baseball. It ended up turning into football when I got an internship with the Detroit Lions coming out of college. And interestingly enough, their headquarters is in Allen Park. So a lot of times when people go to work for a professional team, they have to relocate. And for me, I literally grew up 5 minutes from where the team headquarters was. But I was brought in for new media. This was in 2004. And at that point, there was no social. So I came in to oversee this extremely antiquated website. I was a content person. I've always been a writer. And I got to interview players. I got to oversee the site, and it was really wonderful. But the really awesome thing was that when social media did become a thing, I was tasked with leading that. And if you can even imagine what it was like to have to go to ownership of a team and say, we really should be on this Facebook thing because people are doing it. You can't even imagine that anymore. But at the time, it was new. And so I got to be the social media manager, and it turned out that I absolutely loved it. It was something that was just like breathing for me. And so when I left the Lions in 2014, I decided to go into business for myself. And I started doing LinkedIn consulting because it was this B2B and ghostwriting thing. And so I've been doing that for about 6 years. And now I'm the owner of Stack Brands, which is a partnership with gentleman Herman Moore, who played in the NFL. That's where I met him, was through the Detroit Lions. And so that's the work I'm doing right now is branding, brand strategy, marketing consulting. And then I have this passion project of First and Sober.
What a beautiful background. Thank you for sharing. And Chrissy and Herman are like the perfect odd couple when it comes to business. We've had the opportunity to have both of them influence. I've had some meetings with both of them, and oh my gosh, it's been a joy to get to know him through you as well. Two brilliant minds, complementary minds. So really a nice partnership you have going on there. And I love your history. So thank you for sharing that. And, Chrissy, let's set the tone here let's share a little whatever you're comfortable sharing. I mean, Chrissy's been very transparent on her LinkedIn page with this newsletter that has grown to attract literally tens of thousands of people from around the world are following what she's writing about on LinkedIn, which is the choice of living sober. And what a difficult choice that is. So whatever you're comfortable sharing, Chrissy, I'd love for you to talk more about your struggle and when you knew like something's got to change. I need to get sober.
The interesting thing is, I grew up around alcohol, and growing up around it, it really signified love for me. And it was relationship. Alcohol was what was there when love was present. So that was something that I was always around. And I had some things happen. A lot of people, I'm very passionate about, early childhood trauma and childhood developmental trauma. And when I went into college, I was coming off of a rough time, and I just, as a lot of people do in college, we binge drink. Well, for me, that was not a good experience. I would binge drink. I would get really, really angry. Just a lot of things. There was just indicators that it just wasn't the greatest choice for me. But as I got out of college and then went into, starting a family, it had really leveled out, so it was like, I didn't feel like there was any major issue. But as things continued, I really recognized that it wasn't good for me. And I think what I talk about is kind of this little quiet voice that is there and present, but you don't want to think about it because alcohol can be this way of numbing. It can be this way of escaping, this way of kind of relaxing, or at least that's the way it's perceived. And for me, there were a few years that I knew it wasn't good for me. But it wasn't the vision of I'm going out and getting drunk every night. That wasn't happening. It was literally just, it was something that was an integral part of my day. And what I started to find was that it became a focal point throughout my day. I mean, it would be like, okay, well, when do I get to drink? When do I get to have that glass of wine? And I think that's what can happen sometimes. And what's been so interesting with the look at gray area culture or gray area drinking that has kind of come to the surface lately is it doesn't have to be like you're homeless with a brown paper bag on a corner. That doesn't necessarily that isn't the only person that is, the alcohol problem, right? So literally it was years where it's poking me and poking me and poking me. And I'm going, I really need to quit, but I'm refusing. I'm not doing it. And what I wasn't going to do is tell anybody, because you tell somebody and then that person might try to hold you accountable, or you might be out with that person and they might kind of look at you sideways because you said you thought you might have a problem and now you're drinking again. So I didn't want anyone to be holding me accountable. So I kept it all to myself. And it got to the point where I was in this cycle of drinking at night and waking up with just dread and anxiety and shame. That, oh, I drank again. Oh, I'm terrible. I can't believe I did this. I failed. And you start to make these deals with yourself. Well, I'm not going to drink on Thursdays. I'm not going to drink only on the weekend. I'm going to only have one drink. And ultimately, this is common with people. You don't fulfill those promises to yourself. It just continues, right? And I hit a bottom where I was at an event, and honestly, anybody from the outside would not have been like, wow, she was fall down drunk. It wasn't one of those situations, but I knew. I was following somebody, a celebrity, around like a puppy dog at this event. I was embarrassed. I was so ashamed by my behavior. I remember I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, freaking out. I was like, I cannot believe I did this. I cannot. And it wasn't anything egregious, but just internally, I was so ashamed. And I still didn't stop. It took another, I think, month or so. And I was running. I like to run. And I was listening to this book called The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. And I never did get past the first chapter because she was talking about, she'd lost her job. Her husband, I think, had lost her job, but she was in a really bad place. And she started talking about drinking at the end of the night as a way to cope. And I had never heard anyone talk about this outwardly. And I literally stopped running, and I was just blown away that this person was talking about an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And I went home and I started looking up this on Google. And I don't remember, I looked up some silly stuff like, alcohol, but I'm not addicted, or some weird stuff like that, and I found Laura McCowan. And she had this blog where she was so candid about writing about just these ugly situations. She talked about a DUI and how she ended up in jail. She talked about these situations with her daughter. And to have somebody sharing this, it was like I had a confidant. It was like I had someone who I could confide in, but I didn't have to out myself. And that ultimately became the fuel for First and Sober, where I felt like I should pay it forward. And even before I started First and Sober, every year on my sobriety date, I would share on social because I wanted people to not feel alone. And I wanted them to recognize that just to have somebody to relate to without having to tell a family member or a friend that they were concerned. So I ended up quitting on June 18th of 2017. And so I've been sober from alcohol for that long. So it's been about almost 5.5 years.
Wow. Congratulations. So I'm sure it's still there. Are there still times even today where you're like, where you think about alcohol, where you think, oh, it'd be nice to have a glass of wine, do those thoughts cross your mind still, or have you overcome that?
Yeah. So what happens is, the thing about when you quit drinking, and if you're using drinking as a coping mechanism, ultimately, whether you are physical, because that's one of the things, if you're physiologically addicted to where you have to go through detox, detox from alcohol can kill you. But even if you're not to that point, and you could quit with no repercussion physically, your body is still accustomed to receiving that alcohol. Your brain is still used to receiving it. And so when you remove the alcohol, I would call it PMS on steroids. It's like you end up so emotional because your body is used to having it. So your body chemistry shifts. And on top of that, if you're using alcohol to cope with something, those feelings that you're used to just suppressing by using the medicinal alcohol as a medicine, now those are there. So what do you do with those feelings? So for me, a lot of it's less I feel the need to drink, and it's more I sit here and go, oh my gosh, I want to numb so bad. I don't want to feel these feelings right now. I don't want to go through this hard stuff right now. So that's what I get most. As far as difficulty being around alcohol, I still struggle with wine. Wine was my love affair. I read the book called Drinking a Love Story by Caroline Knapp, which is this really famous drinking memoir. And she talked about that romantic relationship with alcohol. And when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, somebody's actually talking about this thing I couldn't articulate, because I would feel like, that Sex in the City feel like, oh, I'm drinking wine on my couch, but it's like you have this relationship with it. And for me, that was red wine, and white wine to a degree, but it was wine. I still struggle to be around it. I can have people drink around me if they drink mixed drinks, beer, whatever. But if it's someone I care about enough to be able to say, please don't drink wine around me, that's really, really hard for me still.
We're going to get into how you've kind of helped us see our responsibility as food marketers in a different light at the Produce Moms when you became honest with your journey. But I've got a few questions I'd like to ask you about the First and Sober newsletter in particular, then before we dive into that. So First and Sober, the newsletter. So you mentioned that your actual sobriety date was 2017, and the newsletter just recently launched. Like, has it even had a birthday yet?
I think it's like now. I got to look at the actual date. It's right around now.
So you've been pinning this for about a year, and have tens of thousands of people following along with what you do, literally from all across the globe. People who don't know you at all, but they have found you through this newsletter platform. I'd love to first know why LinkedIn? Why did you choose LinkedIn as the place to start this?
Number one, I had a following there. But the other thing was, my passion is reaching the functional alcoholic. That's where I had experience growing up, and it's what I became. To me, it's the person who looks like they have it all together, who is a high functioning person. They have a career, they have a family, they have the white picket fence. Everything looks like it is how it's supposed to be. But they might be miserable inside, and they might be leveraging alcohol as a way to cope with things, whether it's past trauma, whether it's just insecurity, whatever it might be. It's the people hiding in plain sight. And those are people that I'm really passionate about reaching. And those are the people too, like when we talk about drinking culture, the people that can hide, because it's so accepted in our culture to go to a business event and it's centered at a bar. I mean, how many business events do you go to that it's literally people standing around a bar?
Or it's advertised as there's
Yeah,
open bar, come for happy
absolutely.
hour.
Hmm.
I think it's every business event, to the point
Yeah.
where a lot of my friends and I in the produce industry have gotten to the point where we're like, it's a grotesque level of emphasis,
Oh
in
yeah.
in our professional lives. So that was, my candid dialogue with my friends in this industry, talking, candidly about the alcohol culture within, food and bev, specifically produce. And then also learning more from you about what it means to be living as a recovering alcoholic, someone who's choosing sobriety, what that actually means. Chrissy, something that stuck with me when you confided in, or became on, just owned your journey with myself and everyone at the Produce Moms team. Something that really stuck with me was, your thoughts on the mom culture and the correlation of booze within mom culture. And that was something that that really hit me like a ton of bricks. So I'd love for you to just speak candidly on that. Because when you spoke from the heart to me on that, it really did change my life and the way that I approach alcohol in my personal and professional life.
One story that sticks out for me, that was, there were some things that happened in succession right before I chose to get sober, that really hit me and kind of weighted me down. And there was this one situation. I had a really good friend of mine was over, and my kids they probably would have been 6, 4, and 2. 2017, yeah, 6, 4, and 2. And I was making cookies with them. My friend was making cookies with me and with them, and I was drinking wine. And there was a moment where I said, and it was like, how you make those comments and you're kind of fishing, kind of to see what somebody would say. And I said something about the fact that like, well, and I'm just an alcoholic. And I like raised my glass and she said in complete seriousness, zero judgment, zero judgment. But she goes, yeah, but you're functional. And it just hit me. And I was like, oh, okay. And at that time, my oldest daughter was 6 years old. They would talk about how mommy loves her wine. And wine is mommy's favorite thing. I think I have a video with my daughter like talking about it, 6 years old. And I remember breastfeeding each of my kids and going through this battle of like, got to make sure it's not in the milk. But like, that was just such a focus, like making sure that like I could safely do that. And that was a big part that led to me choosing to get sober. But then when you come out the other side, you talked about the culture and the pressure. It really hits you when you quit. And it really, really hit me hard how that's the solution to everything for moms. Oh, we'll have a glass of wine. Oh, was it a hard day? We'll have a glass of wine. Oh, let's all get together and have wine. I went and took my youngest to the JoJo Siwa concert. I got front row tickets, long story. And these parents are drinking with their kids there. And I'm going, I really, it takes a lot to get me to judge anybody drinking because I've been that person. So I 100% would have been that person. But on the other side of it, it's hitting me like, why are we doing this? Why are we drinking in a moment we should be present with our child? And we're sitting here, we have to have the beer. And I say that because I know what it was like. I was that person. You go to a birthday party, a kid's birthday party, and you've got alcohol there, you know? And there was this one article, and I cannot find it again. And I'm so upset that I can't find it. I've tried Google searching and I can't find it. But this mom wrote about how she had her adolescent daughter at a store, and they were planning for her to have a birthday party sleepover. And they were in line at a store, and the mom was talking to another woman, and she said, oh, we're getting ready to she's going to have this birthday party tonight and a sleepover with her friends. And the person responded to her, and this other mom was like, oh, right, so you're going to got to make sure you get the wine. Mom's got to make sure she has her wine there to handle all that. And the writer said something along the lines of, what message are we sending our kids that we're telling them we can't handle parenting them without alcohol? That it's so difficult to be their parent that we have to numb out, we have to medicate ourselves with alcohol. And she's going, no, and I'm not going to have wine. I want to have fun with my daughter. Like, and I had never thought of it through that lens. And it was crazy to me. So I'll stop there.
I think I'll just emphasize it with when you said that to me and when you shared that article and those remarks and that concept with me, then I immediately started connecting the dots within my own culture, and also just like the way that I do feel like it's also imbalanced from like mom needs a drink is far more common of a saying than dad needs a drink. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but at least perception in my household is or in my life, that's something that I feel like is more closely tied to motherhood, like than it is necessarily being a father. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm sure there's a dad out there shaking his head. There's certainly alcohol brands that have been named after moms and dads at this point. You got Mom Water. There's like a seltzer that's named after dad. I can't remember what it's called, but and then little things too. Like I remember one day you were shopping and you showed me the wine carriers that are on display, like you texted me a photo of it. The wine carrier that was on display at Kroger stores, and it said, fruit or wine
He
is
said
fruit,
wine is
right?
basically fruit salad.
Wine is basically fruit salad. There you go. And that's
Mm-hmm.
it's a corporate marketing message. And for the amount of people, if we evaluate the statistics and the data, the amount of people whose lives have been ruined or their families have been ruined through alcoholism, it's kind of a slippery slope. And it was right after you sent me that text we're at the Produce Moms, we adopted a new standard that for every alcohol recipe we do 2 non-alcoholic recipes. For every 1 cocktail that we promote, we have a complimentary mocktail or 2 that we promote as well. Or just beverage. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily even be a mocktail. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to ask Crissie some fun questions. And then, Crissie, I'm also going to ask you about some of the data that Megan Klein, our guest, who's the founder of Little Saints Mocktails, she shared some really insightful data on just generationally what's happened with alcohol consumption over the last 3 generations. And gosh, what we're seeing right now in terms of Gen Z's interest in alcohol culture and consumption, it's staggering. So when we come back, stick around, folks. There's more with Crissie Zavicar.
I love grocery shopping. You all know that. And there's nothing that brings a smile to my face like when I actually see a Produce Moms branded fruit or vegetable on the grocery store shelf. So today I want to remind you all that we actually have an Idaho potato line that's available at select Walmart stores nationwide. So look for the Produce Moms branded Easy Baker potatoes. They are individually wrapped, triple washed, ready to cook Idaho potatoes grown by our amazing brand partners at Wada Farms. Make sure that you look for them. You are going to love them. We have so many ideas, recipes, inspirations, even a field trip to the farm that's available on our website. All you have to do is scan the little QR code that's on your Produce Moms Easy Baker to experience it all. Thank you so much, and eat more potatoes.
Welcome back to the Produce Moms podcast, everyone. Lori Taylor here with Crissie Zavicar. Crissie is the author of First and Sober. It is a mega LinkedIn newsletter. It's all about abstaining from alcohol and living with intention and presence. She's also a partner at Stack Brands and a dear friend and mentor of mine. So, Crissie, we're back. Gosh, you've shared a lot. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your candor in the first top of the show. Let's do what we call breaking the ice here at the Produce Moms, where we'll ask you some unique questions just about like your highs and lows of the week, so to say, your personality, interests, etc. So we'll start with my favorite question to ask our guests. What is the best thing that's happened to you this week?
The best thing that happened this week, I got to take my son yesterday to School of Rock, which is a music school. And for him to start getting lessons, the boy taught himself how to play Bohemian Rhapsody on the piano by himself in 3 weeks, never taken a lesson, and he can play it seamlessly. So I got to see all these people blown away by my kid's apparently piano prodigy self.
I love it. That's amazing. I got to see a video. You got to text me a video. That's amazing. And yes, what a small little victory of the week, or maybe even the year at that. All right. Let's say the last thing that made you laugh.
The thing that came to mind, I was watching a true crime show, and there was a blunder by the police officers that they were interviewing somebody named Trevor, and they were like, "Come on, Trevor, you know what happened?" He was like, "I have no idea what happened." And they're like, "So we walked Trevor by this other guy that knew him," and then it was at that point we realized we had the wrong Trevor.
Oops. Okay. Yep. That would make me laugh too. All right. Since you have such the entrepreneurial spirit, I got to ask you my favorite question for fellow entrepreneurs. Do you love winning or do you hate losing, and why?
I love winning because it reminds me that I'm a boss and I know what I'm doing.
That's right. But losing's not all bad, because that's where we learn.
Oh, no, I learned major things from losing. You have to lose. It just sucks.
Same. All right. And I'm going off script, going rogue. This is not a question I've asked anyone else, but say you're on a business trip. What's the one thing you always pack in your overnight bag?
My Kindle.
Oh, I thought you were going to say your Nintendo Switch.
Oh, yeah, I do that too.
Crissie's my number one, Nintendo loving friend here.
That's true. I'm shooting zombies these days, just so everyone knows. Zombie shooting.
All right. Let's get back to the topic at hand. We mentioned before the break, we referenced episode 245 with Megan Klein. Within that episode, she shared some statistics. 55% of Gen X drinks, 42% of millennials drink, and only 21% of Gen Z drink.
I can see that. I think just from the way that we parent and just from the culture, So, I mean, I'm the child of baby boomers. I think, there's a certain way that culture exists, and then the children of that culture, I think there's a way that we exist. And there's become this the drinking culture and the awareness around it is growing. This sober culture, this awareness around sobriety, and there's some people doing really great work in the space, and people becoming really aware of it. So I can definitely see that it can be getting to that point where it's starting to get lower for sure.
Okay, so we have a section of our podcast. This is one of my favorite things that we do. We share headlines and then we kind of discuss them. All right. So I've pulled a couple headlines here, and actually one of them is a headline that we mentioned to Megan as well. So Vogue wrote, quote, this is the headline from Vogue, like the fashion magazine, quote, "No one is drinking anymore." Vice News, quote, "Alcohol lost its cool." Thoughts?
No. No. No.
All right, here's another one. And this is from neuroscientists. This is another one that you might have the same reaction to or not. I don't know. Andrew Huberman and Daniel G. Amen. I hope I'm pronouncing those doctors' names correctly. They're both medical doctors. They revealed that alcohol is harmful to our health, even in small amounts. Quote, "Turns out those studies claiming that 1 glass of wine a day is good for you were commissioned by the alcohol industry." Thoughts?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Very good. All right. So there you have it. The perspective on those headlines from someone who herself is, do you say recovering alcoholic? Every person I know who's overcome addiction, they say it's an active ing style verb. Like, I'm recovering.
Yeah, I say that I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and to me, it's something I can't mess with, just because I can't control it, and yeah, it is ongoing. It's learning how to be in the world and absorb your feelings. It's how to cope with things, because it stunts your growth as a person when, instead of dealing with the hard things, you kind of drink them away. I didn't want to be with myself. I didn't want to experience myself. So I drank to check out. And when you do that, you're not dealing with the part of you that doesn't want to be with yourself. You're not dealing with those feelings. And so you then have to double back. I mean, these past 5 years have been, I mean, I posted about this, when I was drinking. I could tell you that I'm sure I hadn't cried, in months. I'd be able to say, like, I can't remember the last time I cried. Now, I cried yesterday. I can cry multiple times a day. I was somebody that people would tell me, "You are very sensitive." And that did not register with me. And now recognizing how sensitive of a person I am, how much of a feeler I am, drinking was to kind of get away from that, and it checked me out. So to me, yeah, it's this ongoing journey of learning how to be with yourself and learning how to overcome things that were too difficult to deal with in the past.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Your newsletter certainly brings that to life. I'm not sure how often you publish or if there even is a cadence to your publications. It feels like at least once a week you're publishing a new piece within your LinkedIn newsletter, First and Sober. But anything in particular from your newsletter archives or the content that's like resonated at a level, like a standout viral level, within what you've composed on that newsletter, or anything that you are in particularly passionate about that you'd like to, kind of share with our audience today?
It's interesting to write it because it goes in waves. So I'll write something and people will publicly respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one thing that surprised me that a lot of people responded to was that I posted the song lyrics from a Tim McGraw song called "One of These Days." And the lyrics basically go through this process of this young man who, he used to be a bully. And then he, was jilted a girlfriend. And then ultimately at the very end, it comes to where it's like he didn't really love himself.
Right.
But I posted that on a whim. It was a song that had always spoken to me, and I used to sing it in my room by myself when I was a kid. And people responded to that in droves, and it surprised me. I didn't understand where that came from. What ends up happening though, because of the content, sometimes you just have to believe that you're reaching people, because people aren't going to publicly be like, "Oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, I go through that. Oh yeah, I'm drinking." And so it's almost like I almost think of it as almost like a spiritual thing, because I get encouraged periodically through private messages. So every once in a while, I'll kind of be like, "Are people really paying attention?" And someone will reach out to me with the most humbling, gratifying remark of like, "You know what? I've been reading your stuff and I made the decision, and now I'm 30 days, I haven't had a drink." And it's like, holy crap, and that's the reason that I do it, because to me, it's paying it forward. I wouldn't have gotten to where I was without other people talking about it. And so to me, I just want to talk about it and share my experience so people don't feel alone. And so maybe they'll think about what they're going through, because I didn't realize how alone I felt until someone reflected my experience back to me. And I was like, oh my God, someone else is experiencing this. And I didn't even realize how alone and isolated I felt until someone, said it to me back. I don't even think I knew what a functional alcoholic was until 2017, which is shocking to me because it's so common of a thing, but I don't think it occurred to me what that meant.
Before we wrap things up, let's share a little bit why we decided, like, why now that we decided to have this conversation on the Produce Moms podcast. I was candidly talking to Chrissy in one of our many weekly meetings, and I was like, I think we really want to kind of like lean into resolutions beyond just like, hey, here's a salad recipe, like that's so snooze in my opinion, like how can we leverage what we're doing at the Produce Moms to be a stronger force for good and more empathetic too. I mean, life is just hard right now. Like I just feel like I've been living in this, I mean, if you're not watching me on YouTube right now, like my face is explaining it because I don't even know what word to use for how I feel since really the pandemic in 2020 to modern times. Okay. Like it's just not like life is so weird for so many people. I've had challenges that I didn't even know existed in my life as an individual as well as a small business owner. So that was certainly a driving force for this episode. But also, when I think about, the business side of what we represent here at the Produce Moms and doing food and beverage marketing for really the most wholesome thing in consumer products, the most wholesome thing in the entire grocery store. I think some of the remarks that you've shared, Chrissy, some of the lessons that you've taught me and the team here at TPM, I think they really resonate. And I hope that those who are with us, appreciate, what we've done today with this episode, because it is definitely outside the box for what we typically do at the Produce Moms, but it seems timely. It seems extremely relevant. And I am exhausted with, the alcohol culture at professional events. And so that is really what the motivating factor for me to bring this episode on. And thank you, Chrissy, for your leadership and helping me realize like it doesn't have to be this way, folks,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that you brought somebody on for mocktails, because it's one of those things that unless you've been through it, you don't understand what goes on in the mind of somebody that's struggling through an event. Like you don't understand the people that ask you why you're not drinking. You don't understand how you feel like you have a spotlight on you. And to be able to have something fun in your hand and be able to feel like you're a part of it with everybody else is so invaluable. And so I love that you're bringing attention to that as well. And I love that just in general, you're bringing attention to this as well. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for all that you do. I mean, I do feel like vulnerability is an overused term, unfortunately, because it's a very meaningful word. But it is a moment of vulnerability to be able to be like, hey, here's my flaws and here's why I'm sharing them. And here's what I've overcome and here's how it's changed my life. So I appreciate and honor that in you. You know, any remarks that you might have, Crissie, before we take a brief break and then we wrap it up, but anything that you'd like to share with someone who, as they listen to this episode, they're thinking, this chick is me.
That you can do it and that you need to, just take it 1 second at a time. Sometimes you have to take it 1 second at a time. You will feel like you can't do it. You will feel like this is just too hard. And the cravings, the desire will pass. They're fleeting. Have somebody you can call for encouragement, but you can do it. And what's on the other side, you might think, how is my life going to be fun? How am I going to have any fun if I don't get to drink? How will I have any friends if I don't drink? Oh my gosh, life is so much more fulfilling and so much richer and so much more wonderful on the other side of alcohol, I promise. It is 100% worth it.
You have been as bold as to tell me it's the best decision you've ever made in your life.
Oh, yeah.
Well, with that, we're going to take our final break, folks. When we come back, we'll wrap things up, but stay tuned.
Hey, everybody, you asked, we listened. So I know that you all love our dog food recipes on theproducemoms.com. Together with our brand partners at Sage Fruit, we have actually published a dog food cookbook. So visit theproducemoms.com/ebook and you can download your free copy of the dog food cookbook presented by the Produce Moms and Sage Fruit.
Here with Crissie Zavicar, friend, champion for all people who are at any stage of the sobriety journey, and co-founder of Stack Brands. So Crissie, we're thrilled that you're here. It's been an incredible episode. We're going to wrap things up. So something I always like to close our shows with is advice from others. We all get advice. And I imagine that from a young gal working in the NFL to the roles that you've had in digital marketing, being such an early adopter in these spaces, a LinkedIn consultant for thousands of entrepreneurs and ex-NFL players and all sorts of amazing people that you have helped elevate their professional profile and status on LinkedIn. I'm sure you've received no shortage of advice. So our final question for you is, it's a two-part question. What's the worst piece of advice you've received? And what is the best?
The best piece of advice I received, as we're talking about moms, is I will just say that I'm blown away by children. And the one thing I'll say to moms, it's never too late with your kids. Even as adults, if you're an adult and your mom came back to you and asked for forgiveness for something genuinely and sincerely, it's never too late with your kids. So never feel like it's too late. And I'll say that I love learning from my kids. And one of my favorite things is I had a rough day one day and my 3 kids were with me. And I said, guys, I had a really hard day. I screwed something up and I'm feeling really bad. What should I do? I was like, let's see what they say. And my oldest said, you should read a book, as she's like reading a book. And my son said, you should hang out with your kids. You should spend some time with your kids. And my youngest, the snuggler, she said, you should give me a hug. And nobody said you should feel horrible about yourself. Nobody said you need to go beat yourself up. Nobody said, oh my gosh, how did you screw up? It was this resonating, overarching, you should take care of yourself and comfort yourself and be there for yourself. And that to me is like the best advice I ever got.
So with that, Crissie, let's make sure that folks know where they can connect with you, where they can follow along with your amazing newsletter, or anything else that you would like to promote or say as we wrap things up.
Absolutely. So right now, the newsletter is primarily on LinkedIn. It will ultimately be on firstandsober.com, but not yet. But you can go to linkedin.com/in/Crissie Zavicar, all one word, and the newsletter is there. And I would love for you to follow and read along.
Crissie Zavicar, you are a star. Thank you for being here. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Don't forget to subscribe to the Produce Moms podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and any preferred podcast platform. Check out the Produce Moms on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Special thanks to everyone involved with the Produce Moms podcast, my amazing team. Stay tuned till next time.
The Produce Challenge is a tool that we've been publishing at the Produce Moms since 2013. This tool is an incredible, easy way for you to discover more. It is a proven tool and strategy to get us all to eat more fruits and vegetables in both volume and variety. When we started the tool in 2013, the goal was to encourage everyone to go into the produce department and try them all. Find your favorite. Challenge to view this month's Produce Challenge. Remember, it's never too late to start. This tool helps you eat more fruits and vegetables, a different fruit or vegetable every day. It's also a great tool for seasonality, and you can count on us at the Produce Moms for all of the tips that you need on how to select, store, and serve each of the produce items of the day in the Produce Challenge through our social media channels. Hope to see you taking the Produce Challenge soon.